Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech. And today, we're going to be talking about Selesnya Dryads, a very, very weird creature type that, oddly enough, sort of got a boost from Magic Foundations. But before we hop into the video here, as always, let me know in the comment section below at the end of the video, is there a specific Dryad that I should have put in this deck? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comment section. And before we also hop into the deck here, we also have to talk about that we are currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers. As of the recording of this video, we are at 910 subscribers, and we are getting so close to that sweet 1,000. And if you want to be part of the huge giveaway that's going to be happening, you're definitely going to want to subscribe to the channel, because there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be given away. We're going to be doing decks, and we're going to be doing singles and sealed product, and you're definitely going to want to be part of that. It's going to be free to enter, but one of the things you'll have to do to be able to be entered into the giveaway is to be subscribed to the channel. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, so that way you will be notified when we do the giveaway. So let's go and hop into the actual deck here. So simply put, these cards right here, Adaptive Automaton and Metallic Mimic. I've always wanted to feature a deck with both of them, just because you have 8 lords in, not every creature type has a lord, where it's just like 2 or 3 mana, gives a buff and has a nice ability. Unfortunately, not every creature type has access to that. So I was kind of thinking, what if we took these 8 cards, or technically 2 cards, but 4 copies of each of them, and built a deck with a solid core of good creatures, but again, they don't have a lord, maybe mix it with collected companies, spoiler alert. And I got to thinking, what can we actually do? And I settled on Dryads of all things. There's a number of different decks that you could do with these cards, but I really wanted to do Dryads just because there's some really, really cool Dryads in Pioneer. And overall, I think that this is a pretty solid deck in terms of, its collected company, putting out a bunch of good solid creatures and turning them sideways. I think this deck is pretty solid. But anyway, so we're playing 4 copies of Adaptive Automaton and 4 copies of Metallic Mimic in the deck. But of course, we're playing actual Dryads. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. What cards are we actually playing in this deck that are considered Dryads? So we are playing 4 copies of Dryad Militant. The card is fantastic. I really, really love Dryad Militant. It's a 2-1 for 1, really nice ability, fits well in the deck. We're also playing 4 copies of Loam Dryad. It's kind of like a canopy, I'm forgetting the name of it all of a sudden, but it's where you tap it and then you can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, be at the tap another untapped creature. It's just good, helps us ramp a little bit if we need to. We do have a card here that we'll see in just a second that we're definitely going to want some extra mana laying around to fully maximize the card. So definitely huge fan of Loam Dryad in this deck. We're also playing 4 copies of Kyrian Beastcaller. This card is so good. I've always loved Kyrian Beastcaller. I play it in standard. The card is just really, really good. Feels good. We play a whole bunch of creatures. We get a bunch of 1/1 counters on it. Eventually, our opponent's going to fatal push it, or it's just going to die, and then we distribute the counters. Overall, it's just pretty good. Huge fan of Kyrian Beastcaller. We're also playing 4 copies of Knight of Autumn. There's a whole bunch of enchantments going around in our metagame right now just because of cards like Unholy Annex and Blade of the Oni, and a bunch of other good artifacts and enchantments. So having main board access to that is pretty sweet, but by itself you can gain 4 life or put 2 1/1 counters on it, and it's a 4/3 for 3. Overall, Knight of Autumn, pretty sweet card. We're also playing 3 copies of Tristani 3 Whispers. This card is just so nice. It's kind of reminds me of Lockstone Smiter, just because it's the 4/4 for 3. You have 3 really, really nice activated abilities there. All of them are good. What's nice with Death Touch, it makes, our opponent maybe not want to block quite as much, just because all of our smaller Dryads can potentially get Death Touch or Double Strike if you leave them unblocked. Overall, huge fan of Tristani. I think it's really, really good in this deck and secretly the best card. And then we're playing 3 copies of Realm Walker. I'll be honest with you, we needed another Dryad, and there wasn't a lot of other good ones I wanted to feature in terms of they just didn't really fit the deck that well, so I decided to just throw in a few Realm Walkers, and I do like this card overall. Obviously, we're going to choose Dryad, and we can play Dryads from the top of our deck. Unfortunately, we can't play Metallic Mimic and Adaptive Automaton if it's on top of our library, which is a little bit awkward, but at that point, if we play 1 extra card from the top of our deck with Realm Walker, we're already doing pretty good. So definitely huge fan of the Realm Walker in the deck. So those are all the Dryads that we're actually playing. We have a few other spells we have to go over that are not Dryads, but they fit very, very well in the deck. We're playing 4 copies of Skyclave Apparition. I wanted a removal spell that's hit by Collected Company. We're also playing 4 copies of that. Skyclave Apparition, I decided to play it over a card like Werefox Bodyguard, just because, again, Unholy Annex, there's a lot of specific cards, not even just Unholy Annex specifically, which we can't even really target it with Skyclave Apparition, but there's just a whole bunch of non-creature cards that we want to hit with Skyclave. So that's why I chose it over Werefox Bodyguard, but honestly, both options are still pretty good. And then Collected Company is pretty straightforward. It's Collected Company. The card is good in any lower to the ground green aggro deck. Huge fan of the card. That's why we're playing 4 copies of it. And obviously, it's nice that we can hit all of our lords with Collected Company and the rest of the whole deck. So it's pretty simple overall. That's the entire main board. Let's go and hop into our lands real quick here. We were playing 22 lands in this deck, and overall, it's a pretty straightforward mana base. We're playing 4 copies of Razorverge Thicket, 4 copies of Temple Garden, and 3 Brushland is our main dual lands. We're also playing 4 copies of Branch Loft Pathway, along with 1 Boseiju and 1 Aganjo. We're also not playing Cavern Souls in this deck because, again, similar to what we talked about with Realm Walker, not everything, technically, when it's not in play, not everything's a Dryad, so Cavern of Souls can be a little bit awkward, so that's why we aren't even playing the Cavern of Souls in this deck. And then rounding out our lands, we are playing 2 copies of Lair of the Hydra, 2 copies of Mutavault, and 1 basic forest. And as our spicy basic land of the day, I wanted to feature a Ravnican forest just because when I think of Dryads, I think of cards like Knight of Autumn and Tristani and Dryad Militant and all these Dryads from Ravnica. And honestly, this forest from the original Ravnica, I really, really love. I mean, Christopher Moeller is one of the best artists in the entire game. I love this basic forest. I know I have him actually in my cube, funny enough. And overall, just a huge fan of this basic forest. I think it's one of the best forest artworks in the entire game. So that's the entire main board, but don't go anywhere yet though. We still have to talk about our sideboard as well as some budget options for the deck. So sideboarding is going to be relatively straightforward. We're mostly just playing a bunch of really good white sideboard cards. And again, if you're new to the channel here, I'm going to go over all the specific cards that I'm currently playing in the sideboard. But if you build this deck and you think you need to change some things up, go ahead and do that. Your metagame is going to look a little bit different than my local metagame. So when I build my sideboard, I base it off of my local metagame, but as well as MTG Arena, as well as Magic Online. So it's a little bit of a mix of everything for the most part here. So let's go and take a look here. So we're playing 2 copies of Deafening Silence. I really love this card in all of my white sideboards just because it's good against all the different spell slinging decks in the format. If they're playing a whole bunch of non-creatures, play Deafening Silence and it shuts that down immediately. So definitely a huge fan of that. We're also playing 4 copies of Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace is fantastic. Any deck that's playing a Graveyard Batters deck, go ahead and bring it in and it's going to be fantastic. We're also playing 2 copies of Portable Hole. It gets rid of all the cheap, early plays in the format for opponents playing like Heartfire Heroes or Thalias or whatever. Any cheap creature or permanent, Portable Hole is going to take care of that. So that's why I'm playing 2 copies of that. We're also playing 2 copies of Werefox Bodyguard, just because I wanted more effects. I wanted more removal that can be hit by Collected Company. So that's why I'm playing 2 copies of Werefox Bodyguard. We're also playing 2 copies of Surge of Salvation. Simply put, it helps us, fight against Pyroclasm and Anger of the Gods and Brotherhood's End and all of those types of effects. That's why I'm playing 2 copies of those. And then we're also playing 3 copies of Pick Your Poison. It's good in a number of different matchups. Most, honestly, the best matchup for it is Rakdos Demons, because if they have a big Archfiend of the Dross, we can get rid of that. We can get rid of Unholy Annex. We can get rid of a Fable the Mirrorbreaker. We can get rid of Valgavots if we're playing against Rakdos Transmog. Overall, the card is just really, really good, and that's why I'm playing 3 copies of Pick Your Poison. If you're playing Green and Pioneer, you're definitely going to want at least 2 to 3 copies of it in your sideboard. The card is definitely very, very strong. So the last thing we have to talk about here, since we're done with the sideboard, is the budget options, and for this deck, it's really straightforward. Play some of the budget dual lands and cut some of the expensive utility lands. You can cut your Aganjos, your Boseijus, your Mutavaults, your Temple Gardens. Just play some cheaper dual lands for the deck. You can also swap out Collected Company. They do go for about $4 US a piece, but I'll be honest with you, as someone who has purchased Collected Companies for $20, $25 a piece, just even a few years ago, Collected Companies for $4 is so cheap. If you have the funds to purchase them, I highly would recommend it, not only for this deck, but for just any decks you might build in Pioneer. Collected Company is such a strong card, and at only $4 a piece, having a really strong card like that is fantastic. But the last thing we have to talk about, the current list as it's constructed right now is only $178 US, just because most of the creatures that we're playing don't really see a lot of play in Pioneer. It's not that they're bad cards per se, it's just a lot of them just don't have a home, so that's why a lot of them are super cheap. But I was able to get the budget list down to $80 US. I kept in the Collected Company. All I did was switch around the lands. That's it. I didn't cut any of the creatures in this deck. So overall, I really love doing weird, kindred tribal decks like this. I know I've done like berserkers in the past, and I've done birds, and I've done other weird ones that you normally wouldn't think of if people want to build, like a creature type matters deck. But overall, this deck was so fun to play. I love cards like Knight of Autumn and Tristani and Dryad Militant, so naturally it just kind of made sense to build a deck like this. And definitely let me know in the comment section below if you have a Dryad deck, or if you decide to build this deck or something close to it. And at the end of the video, I will have a link to Wilt Leaf Aggro. It plays a lot of similar cards as this one, so if you want to check out that deck list, it's a green-white aggro deck for Pioneer. I will leave that at the end that you can click on, and it'll take you automatically right to that video. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, Serwanoki, and Night Red 3. If you're interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 a month, and you get access to the exclusive Commander Crane Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.